evening. Today is Wednesday, September 23rd, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I get a motion to open the meeting, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we are going to be moving into executive session for the purpose of discussing medical, financial, or credit employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I get a motion to move into exec, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So for the public, we will be back hopefully within about a half an hour for our public meeting. Thank you. All right, I think we have everyone. Sorry, I had my screen on the wrong setting and I could only see 3 of you, so I thought I was still waiting for people. So this is Wednesday, September 23rd, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. We have just left executive session and are now back in public session. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please? I think we have everyone. Sorry, I had my screen on the wrong setting and I could only see 3 of you, so I thought I was still waiting for people. Can I get a second? Wednesday, September 23rd, and this is the
Second. By Bill.
Very strange echo on this. Is
Yeah.
anyone else getting that as well?
Yes, I'm
Yes.
hearing
Someone has
myself
their
twice.
Someone has it on their computer. They got it on 2 devices.
Is someone watching the live stream at the same time and not muting the live stream?
Well, it seems to have gone away, so maybe.
All right, so let's do this again. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved?
Seconded by Bill.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do we have any items to be pulled from the consent agenda this evening? I think, Alex, you wanted to pull the calendar, the consent agenda 3.1, the calendar, right? Okay, you're still muted, but I see you nodding yes.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. And then we also wanted to pull item number 3.2 fiscal.
4.2, I think, yeah.
3.2,
Okay.
right? Can I get a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda, or was there anything else that needed to be pulled? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second by Bill.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so let's talk about the calendar first. Item 3.1.
Yeah, so I can. Yeah, so we have to amend our school calendar. As we open our school year, we moved 4 superintendent conference days to the beginning of the school year. And we now have to document that and identify that on our approved school calendar that we that all parents have, and that ultimately at the end of the year we submit to the state. On November 3rd, when we approved our original calendar way back in February, and I'm just checking my calendar to make sure it is November 3rd, was a superintendent's conference day. It was for purposes of parent-teacher conferences, and it's also election day. We typically have had a superintendent's conference day and election day. Blue Mountain Middle School is a polling place, so it made sense that we didn't have school while folks were coming in to vote. Well, a couple things. With COVID, we are not permitted to have guests or parents in the school, so parent-teacher conference day on site is now moot. And we received notice that the Westchester County Board of Elections is going to use Frank G. Lindsay as a second polling place on November 3rd. So November 3rd, we identified on a revised calendar, will be an instructional day. It will no longer be a superintendent's conference day. It will be an instructional day. However, it will be a learn at home day. It will be a district-wide remote learning day. So already, or I should go back to last February, we communicated to our families that there would be no school on November 3rd. There will be school on November 3rd, just everyone will remain at home, and we'll use our remote model for November 3rd.
Were there any other questions about the calendar?
I had
ahead,
been
Alex.
a little bit I've been a little bit confused about the superintendent conference days at the beginning of the year. I had thought that, I guess those were the same as the professional development days, and I guess I had misunderstood, but I just wanted to have clarification on that, normally I think we only had planned 2 superintendent conference days that are last in the calendar we'd approved before. And we had 4 of them at the beginning of the year. And I had thought that those were taking the place of the professional development days that are now scheduled throughout the year. And I was wondering, when those do happen, are they going to be half-day remote, or will the kids be in school will we have any plans for those? And then also, where the additional 2 superintendent conference days came from, or how that was working.
Okay, so New York State allows all school districts to have 4 superintendent conference days that count as student attendance days. Basically, the work that needs to take place during conference days over the last number of years that we've been permitted to have them count as a student attendance day. So when we put our calendar together last February, we had 2 superintendent's conference days already identified in February of 2020 for this year. They were September 2nd and 3rd. As we wanted to make sure we were super prepared for the school year, and with a lot of the changes and a lot of staff development and the training that we had to do, we wanted to have more time. We wanted to have more full days of staff development. We cannot just close school and keep kids home and have staff development without accounting for it. And the way you account for it is with a superintendent's conference day. So we originally had September 2nd and 3rd. We added the 8th and 9th to our calendar, but we had to take those days from later in the school year and move them forward. We can have superintendent conference days at any point of the school year. We space them out to make sure we have a couple days at the beginning of the year. We always use one on election day for parent-teacher conferences, and we use one later in the spring. We don't need one anymore on November 3rd because we can't have in-person conferences, and 2 of our 5 schools are basically shut down for student and faculty use because of voting. So the November 3rd conference day basically gets moved up to September 8th, and then a conference day. And Margaret, I don't have the date in front of me, but it was in March, I believe. We no longer are having a conference day in March. We are using that and accounting for it on September 9th. So the way to make that official, so we can document our days, number of instructional days to New York State, the board has to approve the calendar.
Lisa, did you get your question answered as far as those early release days, the ones that are in green on the revised calendar?
Yeah, that's still remaining to be determined. I'm not sure that we really are able to answer that at this time, and that's fine. I just was, wondering if there is, if we do have a plan for those dates or just not yet. And that, like I said, that's totally fine if we don't know yet.
Yeah, typically the early release days are conversations that come from the schools. They identify different projects or different conversations or different endeavors that they want to use those blocks of time to work on at the elementary, middle school, and high school. Margaret meets with the 5 principals and also meets with the grade level chairs and department chairs to identify that work. This year may be different. We may not have a need for them. We may not want to have the early release days. But I know, there is always ongoing conversation about having some uninterrupted time for collaboration, for planning, and for staff development, because it's very seldom that during the actual instructional day, groups of teachers by team or department or grade level can get together for an uninterrupted period of time. At best, we can get 20 or 30 minutes. The early release days that we implemented a number of years ago gives us a good 3+ hour chunk of time at the end of the day.
And that's not what's happening on Wednesday afternoons on the hybrid schedule when the kids are already having a half a day.
That could, excuse me, Chase, that could happen. I know Margaret and I have been having conversations with the high school and middle school that, the purpose of the Wednesdays at the secondary was to go through and have a thorough cleaning. Basically, cohort A leaves and we prep for cohort B. So it's a distance learning day for everyone, a model that a lot of secondary schools, middle schools, and high schools throughout our region adopted was to have a shortened instructional day on that Wednesday so that we would have more time for collaboration. Now, what we've also identified is when you go through the school calendar and you look at the number of Mondays and Tuesdays that are holidays and the numbers of Thursdays and Fridays that are holidays, the Monday and Tuesday group is off more often than the Thursday and Friday. So we may revisit certain Wednesdays throughout the school year and move Wednesday to the Monday and Tuesday group so that they have as much in-person instruction time as the Thursday, Friday group. So it's roughly outlined, but certainly we can maneuver it enough to meet a number of needs. But the intent throughout the region when we were building that calendar was Wednesday would be a remote day. The day would end a little bit early so we could have that block of time for some collaboration, especially at the elementary level. We have 11 teachers who are full-time remote teachers. And in order to ensure equity and to make sure that whether you're a remote student or an in-person student, you're having an equitable experience, we'll talk a little bit about that later, we have to have high levels of collaboration. Those remote teachers need to still feel part of the department and part of the team, and also at the secondary level as well.
Thank you. Alex?
So what you talked about, making sure that we have equitable Monday, Tuesday versus Thursday, Friday instruction. That was one of my questions. I don't think it's going to preclude us from being able to vote here tonight on this calendar, but we need to make sure that that's equal moving forward, and giving parents enough time to plan. So while we're working this out, we need to make sure that we're giving parents enough time as possible to make sure that they know, especially if they're dropping their kids off now, that they're not relying on the bus system. So sooner information sooner rather than later, decisions made on the building level and what's going to happen and how kids have to move when we're moving around. That's important for all parents, I think.
Can I jump in a second, if you don't mind? Just to talk about that. The Wednesday situation that Joe just mentioned is not applicable to the elementary division. Right. We're there every day. But the situation with looking at the Monday holidays and saying, for argument's sake, next week is a perfect example of that. We are in school next week at 6/12, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the A kids are Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and the B kids are Thursday, Friday next week. I just had a conversation this morning with Mr. Owens, the principal at the middle school, and we talked about the fact that as soon as he can get that information out to parents, in what weeks does that change, the better off we are, because people need to know, even though they're middle school kids, that they may need to change childcare arrangements or other situations in weeks where we are moving days around because there is a holiday.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are we going to be doing similar things with the weeks where we have the kids off on Thursday, Fridays, like the Thanksgiving holiday? Well, Thanksgiving holiday doesn't apply, but I guess that's a little far ahead. Yeah. Okay.
Anytime when the week is irregular, we will be addressing that at the 6/12 level to make sure that as Joe said, our kids are in school as much as we can have them in school, and we want to make sure we compensate for that when there's a holiday that week.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Anybody else have questions about the revised calendar? No, okay. So can I get a motion to approve the revised calendar?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So that brings us to item 3.2 fiscal. And
Yes,
Hi,
I
Mary
asked
Pat.
for that to be pulled.
Yep.
My concerns, if you look at the items in question, it is the contract re-up for several of our administrators. And while I appreciate the work they're doing, my concern stems from the cash out, and is some of the increases that are being offered, and the cash out of vacation time. I think, in the contract itself, it references the unique circumstances of COVID-19. And I think those unique circumstances go both ways. I think this, everybody, I think paying for vacation time that was unable to be taken, I think is frivolous, and I think it's unnecessary. I appreciate it's a nice idea, but I think these are indeed unique circumstances, and everybody, including the people of this district who've had to work and give up vacations and make these sacrifices, everybody is dealing with these. So I object to offering pay for people because they weren't able to take this additional time. And I frankly object to some of the increases as well. I know we very much try to keep near a cap, the requirements of the New York State cap, and some of these are significantly over. For that reason, I can't support these increases. And I firmly support these administrators, but I do think at this time, I think these increases and the buyout of vacation time, I think is excessive. For that reason, I can't support the specifics in this contract.
Okay, thank you, Mary Pat. Joe, would you mind commenting on the increases? Because I don't think any of them went over the cap.
Yeah, and there were some questions we had fielded earlier today by way of email, and there are some different reporting mechanisms that are out there. The increases in the contracts in this part of the agenda are all at 1.75%. As we built our budget last spring, we built a 2% increase. These are folks who are not represented in an employment union or an employee union. These are department heads and other head administrators that are not in the union. They're not represented. The cost of living increase and inflation going from last fiscal year to this fiscal year was 1.81%. So these raises are also below the cost of living increase. So there were some questions about some calculations that just didn't add up. What we believe is that some of the data that was being referenced are from other outside agencies or different associations that pull salary data on a fixed date, usually July 1st. July 1st is the first year of our fiscal year. That's when the system rolls over, for a lack of a better term. For many of our contracts, whether they're individual employee agreements or with unions, Oftentimes, for many valid reasons, those don't get settled and they don't get approved by the board until later into the year. For example, here we are toward the end of September approving them. Last year, there were similar, it was a similar time frame. Maybe it was later in August. But all of the proposed raises are at 1.75% on the button.
I appreciate that number, but we all know that raises and we're talking costs. There's additional costs that are associated and benefits. So it's not necessarily just salary increases. Again, it's, that 1.75 number you reference. There's other, things that go into it. But again, my greatest concern is the buyback of vacation time. Again, you used the term unique circumstances. I see it both ways. It's unique for a couple of reasons. That, maybe, that sometimes there's sacrifice everywhere, and it's not just a function of, getting paid for vacation time you can't take, but sometimes, understanding that that sometimes you do have to make a sacrifice and maybe forego vacation time because of these unique circumstances, especially when you realize that the salaries and the payroll, the income that is paying these salaries is coming from an area that has been, badly hurt by these unique circumstances as well. That's my concern. It's a nice idea, but I just think I don't think it's not something I can support at this time.
All right, thank you very much, Mary Pat. Would anybody else like to make any comments before we vote on this item?
I just like to say
Good,
something.
Corey. Yeah.
I think,
Go ahead.
going to the vacation time, if we've asked people to work and take their personal time away, and we've required them to do this, to not pay them to do that is asking them to work for free. And I don't think that that's right. I think if people have worked and they've earned their vacation time, you either let them take their vacation time or you pay them for it. So I think on that particular issue, I think the right thing to do is pay them for their vacation time.
Thank you, Corey. Alex?
And just to be clear, the raises were approved in the budget that was voted on in June. So, right, we essentially, when the budget was approved, everyone was approving the 2% increase. Do I understand that correctly? Yeah.
Not specifically. I mean, there was some built-in increase, but it's a general budget that's got to be fine-tuned to the specifics as time goes on, including this, which is being agreed on now, months later, 6 months later, So it's not a commitment, but it is a budget, just purely a budget plan. If I said that correctly, Joe and Enrique.
Like the whole budget bill, we put the budget for the community and the community approved it. We put all our salaries in different places. And for me, it's very difficult because that's for whatever amount of money that I'm getting extra, I don't want either me to feel or you to feel that I'm defending my salary, because that's not the point. But the point is that the community approved a budget, and in that budget, we presented a 2% increase for administrators. The board has made the decision not to give us 2%, to give us 1.75, but the approval or from the community was, if you want to say it like that, was that, yes, we're approving a budget where in the budget you have a 2% increase in administrator salary. And
Thank
like
you.
you said it correctly, the board has to make that decision. It has to be either negotiated or made by the board.
Thank you, Enrique. All right, so can I get a motion to approve this item on the agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Passes 4-2. Next item on the agenda was another, hang on, I have to flip my pages here. We have more things that were pulled from the consent agenda. Perhaps a little less controversial. We have some donations to approve. We have both the Barbara Katzenstein Scholarship Fund. The Office of Special Education has received donations in the amount of $100 to be utilized to pay for partial summer camp funding for students with significant handicapping conditions. Thank you very, very much to the Barbara Katzenstein Foundation, the Office of Special Education, I should say. And we also have a donation from SEPTA of 1,400 lanyards to be used by the Hendrick-Hudson School District students. So thank you to SEPTA for that donation. Can I get a motion to approve those donations, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And I believe that was everything we had removed from our consent agenda. All right, so our next item is our superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. We have a few topics that we want to make sure we get to, and that's the reason we put them on the agenda. But let me just run through a couple updates that are of importance, I'm sure, throughout the community. Let's see, our screening app. We sent out an email last Friday preparing people to get ready for our screening app. This is a mandate from New York State Department of Health that every child is screened for COVID-like symptoms, screened for temperature, and screened to make sure they did not travel to a COVID hotspot or have been in contact with anyone with COVID. So this is a brand new procedure as we open up our school year. Like many districts, we partnered with a third-party outfit to provide a digital way of the district receiving this information. So earlier today, we rolled out how parents can download an app to their mobile device, or they can go to a secure website where they can type in some very basic information, their email, their name, their child's email, and then go through the attestation. So that's a new wrinkle. We also will put on our website hard copies of the screener. This is last resort. We're trying to be as paperless as possible with all of our instructional materials this year. We're trying to limit the amount of things being handed off and shared. But we do know that there will be families inevitably that will show up to school and forgot to fill out the app, or they don't have their phone with them, or what have you. So we're going to provide a number of little small attestations, like the size of a Post-it note or half a sheet of paper like this. So they could print out one document from our website and have 6 or 8 different attestations. But we prefer folks go to the App Store and download the app. They can do it right from their phone. They could also do it on the secure website and also our website or the paper screening. So that's a wrinkle, but all of that got pushed out with some instructions today. Transportation schedules have been put out. I believe everyone received an email yesterday, I think, and that the routes have been posted to the parent portal. Again, we're going to have far fewer kids on a bus this year. A number of parents have identified that they will transport their students to and from. And we also have reduced capacity on the bus. So bus stops have changed. If you are a family that have historically, traditionally had a bus stop at the corner or at the mailbox, it's very likely that would have changed. So please make sure that you check this out, because we want to make sure your children get on the bus and off the bus at the right spot. And it's very, very likely the bus stops change this year. Want to give an update on an initiative that was put on pause because of COVID. That's our Princeton Plan stakeholder group. A number of years ago, it seems like forever ago, but a number of years ago, the board commissioned a study to look at reorganizing students in the elementary schools for purposes of reducing expenses and reducing or finding opportunities if we can reduce expenses by organizing students differently. The board wanted to have some further analysis on a grade level plan, or as it's called colloquially, a Princeton plan, where students are organized by elementary school by grade level. So it doesn't matter what neighborhood you live in. It doesn't matter what your zip code is. The Princeton plan is basically designating a school for all children in the district by grade level. So school A could be kindergarten and first, school B could be second and third, school C could be fourth and fifth. An initial analysis that our outside group did identified well over $1 million of potential savings. So the board last school year wanted to move forward with that. We have a stakeholder group that's ready to go. We have a parent survey that will go out in October, and then that group will start to convene later in the fall. Our goal is to have a report and recommendation to the board in January. And the reason for January is so any potential decision to move forward with redistricting or moving forward with the Princeton plan can be made in advance to inform our budget. We start our budget in January, and it's a 4-month process. So the idea is to have some recommendations to the board in the month of January. And while it's a more truncated period of time, we believe that we can do that. We have an outside facilitator that's going to lead that group, and he is ready to go. We just have to sort of get some things settled that we're dealing with right now in the pandemic, and then we can focus on the Princeton plan. So the folks who are participating on that stakeholder group, they know who they are, and we're going to reach out to them and reconvene. And also, if you're a parent, you'll be receiving a survey about this topic in early October. But we thought it was best to wait to make sure we didn't have too many initiatives or too many planes in the air at once. Lisa, did you have a question on?
I was wondering, so we are still considering, if this is approved to move forward, that school could start this way for the 21-22 school year for next fall. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that has been our timeline all along. We wanted to have a decision or a recommendation to the board for consideration in and around January to inform our budget, but also if we decide to move forward to make sure we had time if we had to physically move rooms and furniture and equipment. I think 6 months ago, I would say that's an aggressive timeline, but with what we've been dealing with in a short period of time, I certainly think we can do it and do it well. But that would still be our goal. Our goal would be to deliver a recommendation to the board around January. We would have to work some things out in terms of teacher assignments and allocating teachers and figuring out who would work in what building based on grade level, based on some other considerations. But yes, we believe that would give us a good number of months starting in January after a decision is made, if a decision is made, in order to implement it.
I'm sorry. It's Mary Pat. Can I just, curiosity, you're looking at having a decision in 3 months. I mean, that's, with everything else that's going on, is it possible that the committee will consider maybe, pushing it off a little bit? I mean, and maybe starting it in September 2022 instead. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure who all makes up the committee, how big a group it is, or what, what they what their their affiliation is with the district, whether it's, parents, PTA, teachers, or all of the above. But I honestly, frankly, think 3 months is a very short period of time to actually figure out, to make such a big decision. That's my reservation. And I appreciate that it needs to be done that fast if it's going to be implemented in 2021. But would there be any consideration to pushing it back a year and instead doing it in 2022, if indeed that's what's determined is the best course?
Yeah, our timeline was set forth by the board last year, and the goal.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, but
a lot's changed.
The goal was to try to make a recommendation to inform our budget entering the 2021-2022 school year. We know that we have fixed revenue reductions with Indian Point. That was 6-8 months ago. That was the goal and the timeline, but that was the timeline that was at that time the consensus of the board. If we're going to amend that timeline, we can have that conversation at a future meeting, but we are going to restart the committee. And just while you ask, Mary Pat, I can tell you that the committee has a number of staff, including principals, some district office folks, counselors, and teachers from almost every grade level and special area, particularly at the elementary level. We have community members identified from the Chamber of Commerce, the Montrose Business Association, the Education Foundation, from the Village of Buchanan, the Indian Point Task Force, and the Hendrick Hudson Free Library. And we have 2 parents from all 3 elementary schools, as well as 2 parents from SEPTA. So that's a pretty good sized committee of 29. Our kickoff meeting was scheduled for March 28th, and obviously for obvious reasons that didn't happen. So I wanted to give everyone an update that's still on the radar, but if the board wants to reconsider its timeline, we should probably have that discussion at a future meeting, because we do have a survey that will go out to families, and as well as trying to find time to schedule a meeting. Couple other updates. I'll get to one that's on the agenda. Remote learners are elementary students who are going to be remote all day for the first semester. We've been actually the last 3 days we had back to school night at all 3 elementary schools. I was able to participate in those, which was really exciting, because both PTA meetings and back to school nights, both groups are reporting increased participation. It's amazing how easier it is to participate when you don't have to leave the home. So that may be a blessing in disguise with our current situation. But we're working with the remote families to make sure that they have an equitable education experience. And what I mean by that is that their students have access to all of the specials and all of the teachers and all of the technology and the great things that typically and will continue to happen in our classrooms. Those students do have specials. We're working on how to strengthen their program to make sure they have even more time with their special area teachers, and that they have live synchronous experiences. One of the sort of hiccups or really what we need to wait for is to get a really good feel of how pickup or how drop off and pickup works at all 5 schools, but in particular our 3 elementary schools. With the high number of parents who are going to be driving their children, our introduction and our moving in and out of school is going to be more delayed. It's staggered in terms of buses versus parents. We're identifying, each school's identified certain doors allocated for students, either by grade level or by classroom to enter and leave. So those procedures that typically have been we've been able to do with half asleep are all new again to all of us. We have increased our security personnel and have directed them to the elementary schools in the morning and afternoon to do traffic control. We know that's going to be an issue. We've partnered with all of our law enforcement agencies to make sure they have a presence, because it's going to be a different model, and it's creating a new routine. But once we get those schedules fixed, and once we are really settled into a routine, we'll be able to free up more staff to make sure that our remote students have live, frequent interaction with their special area teachers. And lastly, we've had conversations about what parent engagement looks like as we move into our hybrid or our remote model. We know that this fall will look like no fall that we've had before. It's been a much different opening to school. And we also know that we need to engage everyone, but in particular parents, in new ways. So we're looking at approaches to creating a parent steering committee, for lack of a better term. The parent steering committee will include feedback from parents on their experience and their child's experience. We actually, we have 3 different schools right now. We have 5 school buildings, but we have 3 different modes of instructing kids. We have students who are home in the full remote model. We have students who are coming in at the elementary every day, and then we have our hybrid model at the middle school and high school. So it's not business as usual, and we know that we want to make sure that we create as much parent engagement during this time as possible. So the idea is creating a steering committee. We need to make sure that we have high levels of engagement in terms of rigor in the in-person schooling as well as the remote, and that we're going to create some focus groups. Parents will serve on focus groups, as many focus groups as possible that will help us get feedback and have conversations, even though we're remote and far away. So we're enlisting the help of BOCES to identify some organizations that have experience with this, to help facilitate these groups, to help us ask questions that perhaps we're not asking, or to look around the corner, because we're so busy with the day-to-day, since this is all new, that we want to make sure that we have representation, and we're looking at systems and structures from the 30,000-foot level. So our timeline is we want to make sure we get some experiences under our belt this fall to make sure we have some experiences to reflect on. And so our idea is that in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll build this model out to make sure that we have some folks who do this for a living and do it well that can help facilitate this for us, because there are a lot of questions. Everything is new for everybody. This is a learning experience for us all, and we want to make sure that we have as much parent engagement as possible. And as I said earlier, parent engagement is going to look much different. It's great that we have so many folks joining PTAs and participating in back to school nights and other events that are happening. We want to make sure that we're receiving feedback on what we're doing, on where we can improve, and what questions we should be asking to inform our thinking as we move forward.
Are we going to have some more Q&As between now and when the steering committees start, so that parents can ask questions and give some preliminary feedback? Absolutely.
So this likely would include a series of coffees or small group chats to have some conversation around parental experience that can help shape what these groups really should focus on, and what kind of feedback that we need, what kind of decisions we need to make in order to give parents good feedback. So absolutely. And with that, that's my off the cuff update. And as I said earlier, we added a number of things to the agenda just to grab the public's attention. I'm going to start with 5.3, and then I'll turn it over to our team for some of the other updates. So item 5.
Have one more, before
sure.
we move on, I have one more quick question for you. I know you had a PTA meeting last week, and the PTAs have been very vocal about increasing communication in the community, and their disappointment with our communication up until now. How did that meeting go, and were there any action plans that came out of that?
Yeah, this was one of them. This was a discussion we had about how to engage all families and not make it the sole role of the PTA, but to make sure that we're reaching out to all families and trying to give a voice as best as possible that doesn't have to just feel affiliated through the PTA or through, the athletic association or other groups. That this is not, this would not be an engagement activity where parents need to be affiliated with something in order to participate. That's why the idea of focus groups has really piqued our interest, because we could have many focus groups on many different topics. So yeah, that was a discussion with the PTA, as well as we have a follow-up meeting this Friday. So we're starting to get into our routine of monthly meetings. And they've been great in terms of asking some questions that we haven't thought of, or asking them in a way that we didn't anticipate. And we have a working document in terms of FAQs that we use, that Beth Gruber is helping us with. And then as appropriate, we update them to our website and we timestamp them.
Thank you.
Sure. So I want to talk a little bit.
Alex has a quick question
sorry.
too. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I have two questions before we move on too far. The email that went out to parents today about the screening app, it said it's currently only for families that have one child in the district. When can we expect that families with multiple children in the district can use that app?
So there were two communications that went out. One was for an app and the other was for a web-based form or screener. The app, when you download the app, which I did, you can register. Right now, the technology on the app is you can only register one child at this moment. So here's my little app, and I can go in and I set it up. So you would identify, let's say you were a parent of only one child. So you could use your app for your one child. If you have multiple children, you have to use the web-based form, and you just fill it out one time for each child.
Will the app ever, will we have, like for families that have 2, 3, 4 kids in the district, will it ever work for us?
For multiple children, yes. They're just figuring that out on their back tech end. So there'll be three ways for you to do the screener. You can use your app, you can use their secure website, and tomorrow we will post on our homepage a link to the web form as well.
Okay, because filling out that web form, again, if you have 2, 3, 4 kids and you're trying to get out the door, if you have elementary kids and you're dropping them off every day, it's a lot. It's more work than you think it is. So again, the sooner that happens for parents, it'll make the whole system easier for everyone.
This is a tool that many other districts use, and while that piece of the technology is being updated or upgraded on their end, it's not our app, it's theirs. What they have recommended for some families is maybe their oldest child they designate for the app, so their child's information is preloaded, and they use the app for their oldest son, and they go and use the web-based form for their other child. But it is in the works from the company we're working with to try to use the app for multiple children.
Okay, thanks. And then the other question was about our virtual elementary students. Are we getting them like the workbooks and the classroom library books that they would get in a normal classroom, or are they going to have an opportunity to get those materials at home?
Yeah, actually, book distribution and book handling is a big issue that Margaret has been working on, and I'll let her talk about that in terms of the resources as well.
Thank you.
So the remote kids should have whatever materials the kids in school have. We don't use a lot of textbooks at the elementary level. We have some math workbooks that kids should be using, and then usually they create a writer's notebook and a reader's notebook for their teachers. In terms of reading the novels that go along with their reading units of study, some of those have been available for kids to download, and that I think even occurred on some occasion in the spring. We are working diligently to create virtual libraries, which I think is something that could be useful beyond the COVID situation. And there's interest in that across K-12. So a couple of the librarians are working with me on getting that set up and having the kids be able to link directly. We have a link right now through the Hen Hud Public Library that accesses the Westchester Library System. Obviously, we're looking for ebooks. We also have access to the PNW BOCES library for our kids, our own Hendrick Hudson district-wide library for our students. And currently, Mary Beth DeGennaro, who's the high school librarian, and myself are looking at some other resources to acquire as many ebooks as we can. Again, I see this as something that's useful beyond the current situation that we're in. But kids at home who have chosen the remote only option, and this is true of the secondary students as well, should absolutely have whatever materials the in-school students have. And if necessary, if that becomes, I come to school or mom comes to school and picks up a package for me that contains the novels or the trade books I need for the next 4 or 5 weeks, that should definitely happen. And I'm pretty certain that teachers are making sure that that is occurring. It may even be that that has been put aside already for the beginning units of study. But yes, we want kids to have everything they need to have to be successful, whether we get that to them electronically or in their hand.
Thanks to you both.
Yeah.
I had a question to cycle back to the app, Joe. How does that work when a child arrives at school? Are they going to be expected to show that green button on their phone or their cell phone, or do they, how does that connect with the school so that they know the child has been cleared?
Good question. So all of the feedback that is collected generates a report to the schools. And we had that training today in terms of what the reporting documents will be and how the school wants to receive them. So basically, of the data that are most important, a list of students that failed the screener, therefore should not be permitted to come to school, and the list of students who did not take the screener, who may be in school without it. Any number of people in the school will have that information in real time. Right now it will be the administrators, office staff, and the nursing staff. Because if there are children who make it out of the car and we find out they didn't get screened, we will need to screen them. There's just no way around that. But we will receive real-time reports on who is not permitted in school and who did not take the screening.
Okay, thank you.
In that vein, I'm going to talk briefly, because I don't want to read a document to everyone, our COVID safety response protocol. So as we began this endeavor over the summer with lots of feedback and lots of input and advice from the state education department and the county and the CDC, this is a really nice one-pager. We posted it to our website. This is the work of our regional safety team that Enrique and Anthony participate with. This is the work of Frank Guglieri and BOCES and a number of school districts that are using this document as basically a decision-making tree. So you see on the left-hand side the various scenarios with regards to COVID and each action the district would need to take. So hundreds of pages of guidance and a lot of questions I'm receiving is, what do you do if? These are the most common situations, and we have had some of them. We have had situation number, the light green, a contact of a contact. There have people who have come and said, what should I do? I need to, do I need to quarantine? Do I need to go to the doctor? Or I was in contact with a known positive. What do I do? And this is a handy chart that we wanted to make sure we provided the families. That's on our website. Looks like we edited it too quick because we have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, not 1, 2, 2, 3, but we'll fix that. And you'll see the immediate action, who needs to be notified, and what the next steps are. In each of the back to school nights that I participated in this week, I gave a commentary on this to say that things this school year are going to move very quickly, and that it will be at no fault of our own. That if someone tests positive, that sets off a series of events, both for the school district and the health department and the contact tracers, that it's likely that the school district will be notified that we have a known positive, and that the contact tracers have identified other known positives, and that they will recommend potentially closing school, closing a wing of a school, closing an entire school. Infection rates could reach a certain point where the district needs to close. And we don't have to look far in this young school year of examples in other school districts that have had to make decisions based on this model. So I'm trying to be as honest and forthright as possible. It will happen in Hendrick Hudson. I believe it's inevitable that we will have a positive adult or child, COVID positive adult or child, and depending on the contact tracing and the guidance we receive from the Department of Health, a number of decisions will need to be made, and they'll need to be made quickly. Those are not district decisions in isolation. They are recommendations, and they're not even recommendations, they're must-dos by the county health department. So this is an idea of what happens if. That's on our COVID dedicated webpage. We certainly will put that in future communications that we send out to families, especially in upcoming lanyard. But wanted to communicate this to everyone and make sure that this is a document that folks are referencing frequently. With that, if there isn't a question on this document, I'd like to move up the ladder. One of our major initiatives as we open school this year is around mental health of certainly our children, but also the adults that work with our children. Lisa Schuckman has a primary role in our SEL programs and supports for students, and Laura and I are working on the HR end of things, being able to support our teachers and help our teachers support their families. So I wanted them to just give a brief overview of what we've been up to and different programs and different engagements over the young school year so far. So Laura or Lisa, I'll let either of you take it.
Well, we have done a lot of psychological first aid, which we've kind of shared with you. I believe it was last board meeting. We got the high school was trained in psychological first aid, and the middle school has also watched the video. They were not part of the live presentations due to an issue. However, we've also shared it with the building custodians and the bus drivers. So everybody has had some psychological first aid, as well as our school secretaries. As we began the year, our social workers and psychologists of the district, along with school counselors, also did 2 days of PD with all the staff in the building administration. And it was quite well received, a lot of positive feedback from that. We're going to continue supporting the staff throughout the school year. The social workers and psychologists will hold office hours after school to kind of check in on teachers, letting teachers join them, and letting teachers reach out to them if they have something, and then they can send them the right way. And it'll probably be closer to what Laura is going to discuss further. Today, we were able to do the PD for our coaches. So the coaching staff also got the same PD that the teachers got, which Meg Greiner was on our team, and she felt it was so important to support our athletes as well as our coaches. So today, Mr. Duff, Miss Magnata, and Meg also worked with the coaches. And Meg also has the video of our psychological first aid that she was going to share with the coaches. So we'll continue with this model. Our social workers will continue working with students and the building administration in order to provide resources for students, as well as resources for staff. I know our social workers and psychologists will work along with the building principals in order to provide professional development during faculty meetings, especially as we get more in the swing of thing when everybody's back in school next Tuesday. So that's where we are right now. I know that Laura has also been doing some stuff in the background for staff.
I think Lisa's been doing the bulk of the work because that's a lot of on-site work that we've been doing with students and staff, which I think is so important, and creating systems for, most importantly for students, but again, for staff that are involved, they're learning from it. And then again, having resources available to them. What I've been able to do, and it's something that we've always been doing, we subscribe to EAP. And what EAP is basically a service where Staff can reach out to certified counselors, therapists, financial advisors. I mean, it runs the gamut. So any staff member has access to a lot of these free services. But right now they're focusing specifically on mental health, dealing with the stress of, of the pandemic itself. And so basically, normally every month we try to send out updates and remind staff to take advantage of these resources. Right now there's some online trainings, and again, there's they have a toll-free number that they can call for themselves and for their family as well, which is very helpful. So that's how we've been trying to just provide supports for staff on the back end, to kind of wrap around what Lisa's already doing on premise.
Okay, no
Sorry,
questions.
I was trying to unmute.
Oh.
Thank you very much. It's a stressful time for everybody, and it's really, with the teachers trying all of these new things and the school buildings trying to get prepared for the students to come in and being prepared. It's a very stressful time for everybody at home, at school, at work, in our communities. So thank you for concentrating on that as well and keeping that in mind. Does anybody have questions about the social emotional supports we have in place? All righty, I think we can move along.
Okay, the last topic we put on the agenda under superintendent's report, Mr. Malini is with us just to give us a quick update of our facilities update. He met with our facilities committee earlier today to give an update on our capital project and other matters. So I'll let him give us a brief update from his last visit with us 2 weeks ago.
Okay, just quickly, things are moving along quickly. We're getting things accomplished here. The contractors are moving very feverishly, and every day is, we cross another hurdle trying to get ready to have the buildings open for next Tuesday. We did have students in the buildings already, and we've made provisions to have the building safe and secure for those individuals that are here now. We've been met with the contractors yesterday. We had a very good meeting for the construction. We met with everyone, got an update of where they are, where they plan to be, trying to get some milestones of where they're going to be over the next several days and trying to hit those. So the contractors assured us that over the next several days, they're going to be working, getting things accomplished so that we can have the buildings ready for everyone to reoccupy them. With that being said, we always knew that there's certain aspects of the construction that'll linger on, but in terms of getting the buildings ready for occupancy, we're right on point, right on target right now. I don't know if you want to, Enrique, you want to add anything or discuss anything?
No, I think you said it. If they have any questions, we're ready to answer.
Any questions from the board? All right, we're very quiet tonight. Thank you very much, Anthony.
You're welcome.
So I think, does that end our superintendent's report, Joe?
Yes, we can move on.
All right, so next is committee reports. I think, Lisa, you had something for us?
I went to the Blue Mountain Middle School PTA meeting on the 14th. They held their election and elected their new president and vice president and board. Mr. Owens responded to parents' questions and discussed some of the difficulties with picture day and fundraisers and that kind of thing. So it was a really good meeting. The other thing I went to was Westchester Putnam School Board Association had a town call on the 15th of September. And again, this is an event that happens with Board of Ed representatives across our region. And our focus at that particular meeting was on how back to school is playing out throughout the region. And it was really important for me to be part of that conversation, I think, and to hear repeated across our area that how districts are struggling to be nimble, to be ready to pivot, at a moment's notice. The other thing was that I got from that too is, just realizing that we as districts have imperfect options and imperfect times as well. And so, we're trying to make the best that we can do with very difficult situations that are just not the perfect choices we'd like to have. And so it's really important to remember that. The other thing that happened at that meeting is we did discuss returning to in-person meetings as boards of ed, and some of the difficulties that boards have had as they've tried to return to meetings with sound quality and with being able to visualize and see the people who are discussing things. It's important for us to realize that although we want to return to in-person, there are some difficulties and hurdles to go through. And so it was good for me to hear that perspective and be able to learn from what other districts have been doing. The other thing that happened was there was a board meeting for Westchester Putnam School Board Association again, working on a code of ethics for our organization and discussing our plans for the year. And the last thing that happened was we had an advocacy meeting, which was dedicated to reviewing the New York State School Board Association proposals for resolutions. And those will be presented at the convention in October. And so we spent the evening debating and discussing these proposals. There's 5 resolutions where most of the discussion was focused, and before that meeting in October, we're going to need to select someone from our board to represent our school district to vote on these resolutions. So something to consider is how much discussion we want to have about what the resolutions are and how our district wants to vote on them. But that will happen at the annual business meeting on October 31st at the New York State School Board Association convention. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. How many of us have signed up for that convention? I know I've signed up. Lisa, did you end up signing up? Anybody else? There's still an opportunity to do that. It's virtual this year. There are a lot of really good educational seminars to go to, but they are on weekdays, so that makes it a little difficult for some people. But I suppose obviously one of the people who are going to be attending the meeting will be our representative, so we'll decide that at a later date. Maybe Lisa, when you get some of those resolutions together, we can set aside some time at one of the meetings to look them over and see what we want to do with those. Okay. Does anybody else have any committee reports? Anybody else go to any of the PTA back to school nights or anything that you want to report on? Okay. So our next is, Tom Baker's been waiting very patiently, is our presentation and discussion.
Good evening, everybody. How we doing?
Good.
So, as Mr. Hochreiter said, we are embarking on the most unique school year that we've all dealt with, and I will echo that as part of the interscholastic athletics that on Tuesday, September 29th, we officially return to the fields for the most unique athletic season I think that we're going to deal with. So I just wanted to put together a snapshot of the various topics that have been in discussion since the summer. Myself, Ms. Loretti in the athletic office, and Meg Greiner, our trainer, we have been working diligently, and we are really prepared for this day on the 29th. We met today with our coaches, as Lisa Schuckman said, and we prepared them on that avenue, the mental health aspect of the return to play. So as a snapshot of some of the things, and I've been trying to communicate to the community about once a week since we've got back to the school year in the summertime. If information had come up, I was dispersing campus messages as much as I needed to. We officially have an athletic department during the quarantine, and Mr. Hochreiter loved it when we joined Twitter. So we have a Twitter feed now for the athletic department, and we're just trying to get the information out as we get it. So I put in here, there is a revised calendar now for the athletic seasons. So this Tuesday on the 29th, the 5 sports shown, that's all the varsity and JV teams for the boys and girls soccer, cross country, girls tennis, and field hockey will begin. The winter season, which was slated to start on November 16th, has been postponed till November 30th. And right now, that's all traditional winter sports. That doesn't mean that the Board of Health will deem certain sports that are high risk and postpone them. But at this point in time, all traditional winter sports are slated for November 30th. A few weeks ago, when the fall season was affected, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association made the decision to put some high-risk sports into a season in March, and that's on March 1st, where the high-risk sports of football, volleyball, competitive cheerleading, and officially now today, girls swimming will be going to March 1st as well. Girls swimming wasn't there because it's a high-risk sport. They are there purely because, as of right now, there is a complete lack of facilities of pools. Probably 90% of the Section 1 teams use outside facilities for their pools, and right now, none of them, if any at all, are not many of them are offering their facility up due to the COVID. So that's March 1st, and then the April 19th would be the traditional spring sports. There's been some concern and some questions. I've dealt with a lot of students. I've spoken to them. I've seen a lot of them throughout the time here over the concern of, well, what if I play one sport in the fall season 2 and I have another sport in the spring season? How much of an overlap? There's going to be a very, very limited overlap there, which we as athletic directors are creating calendars now. We are trying to keep the seasons as authentic as possible. And what I mean by that is with a culminating event, a postseason event. So for instance, if a team were to get to the sectional finals of a season, that might be a team that has a slight overlap to the beginning of the season. So we're still, a lot is still working on in terms of the calendar, but that's the calendar of the season. So technically this year we can have athletes for the first time in my tenure, and probably anybody else's in quite some time, that can play 4 different sports in a year. We have kids that are coming out for the teams on Tuesday that typically haven't tried out for those specific sports because their sport of choice isn't offered until the fall season too. So that's where we are right now in terms of the calendar. It can change through the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, but we are ready for it on the Tuesday for these fall sports. And we are officially all calling that season Fall Season 1. Modified sports has been a topic of discussion. I've had a lot of discussion with Mr. Hochreiter on this. When I prepared this document as of Friday the 18th, they were on pause. Late this afternoon, all the athletic directors were informed that the modified sports for fall season 1 would not be occurring. So I don't want to jump to any consensus on what we can and can't do. I'd like to strategize with the district as to what possibilities are there. Can they potentially be moved to the March 1st season 2 schedule? These are questions that I'm still gathering. So before I say things that are not true, I don't want to say much more than just right now. All I know is that right now they will not be happening from the Section 1 point of view for modified sports. We've worked a lot on our reentry protocols and what we're going to do. When I met with the coaches today, typically a meeting might be on all the different types of preseason route protocols and paperwork, things that we have to prepare for. We did that all virtually, provided them the necessary items that they needed to do virtually. Today was really a day to make sure that they understood their COVID protocols and the routines that we had to follow. As Mr. Hochreiter alluded to, the daily screening that the district is following, we're going to be utilizing that as well. So the athletes will have to do their daily screening, whether they're in person or in remote. The biggest difference for the athletes is that when they come to practice, we will be doing temperature checks as they enter the field. It'll kind of be their entry ticket onto the field. The coaches have always kept their attendance, and now the attendance will be kept in a binder that I made for them with another column that just says temperature under 100 degrees. We worked a lot with Dr. Sultrin, our district medical director, in terms of how we would implement this and being prepared for this. The coaches were all fine with it. I think everybody is really just doing whatever we can to have these student athletes back out there. We have protocols in place, just like Mr. Hochreiter provided the flow chart of what happens. We're in the same boat. If a kid is over 100 degrees, we have our protocols of what we'll do. We have protocols in place if they become symptomatic during practice. The mask coverings, and as I said to the coach today, I'm going to be as honest as I can in terms of what the conversations have been with all of my fellow athletic directors, and I had meetings with superintendents in our regions as well. This is one that we feel really strongly about as athletic directors, that we really need to make sure and adhere to when we start our interscholastic program on Tuesday. So for the simple part is the coaches, athletic trainers, athletic personnel, they're in masks 100% of the time. They have to be. They understand that. They were communicated that. We had our meeting today. We were all in masks. We held the meeting outside on the bleachers with no problem. The athletes, what the Department of Health guidelines state is that the athletes must wear their face coverings at all times. And then there's some verbiage from the Department of Health that led to some confusion across the state. And it says, unless intolerable due to fitness of practice or game. And then there became concern as to when is it intolerable? Who can say it's intolerable? Do you need a doctor's note? So as athletic directors across the region, we are trying to be really unified on this front in saying that the athletes have to wear their masks. If it becomes physically intolerable and they have to take it off, then they have to remove themselves out of practice or the game at the same time, and we'll have to socially distance them and isolate them until they're ready to and prepared to come back in. When I had a meeting with the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Executive Director, Dr. Robert Zayas, he met with all of the athletic directors in our section about 2 weeks ago, and his words resonated with me. This is our one chance to get this right. So I'll be communicating that to the families this week. It's been in my communications already. I'm going to visit all the teams on Tuesday, but it's something that we as athletic directors feel really strongly about. Even when our visiting teams come, we're hoping everybody's on the same boat with that one. So we continue to sell that to each of our teams. Some of the protocols that we're doing at the end of the school day, we're not going to have loitering in the high school at the end of the day. All of our kids are going to be leaving the building. They are going to either go home because the practices might be later on after school, for instance, 5 o'clock, 5:30. I'm trying to spread the teams out. Typically, I might have a varsity and JV team practice together. We may have that on day one for some protocol purposes where they can spread out and have to spread out. But then we're going to be dividing our teams up. So we're going to have some teams going later. And that typically happens in practice sessions throughout the year anyway. Or they're going to have to leave the high school building and go right to their practice field. So the one question that came up is I also created a frequently asked questions document. It's on our website right now. Families were questioning, well, if my son is remote learning, can he still be at practice? Or my daughter remote learning? The answer is yes. So they will report right to practice. We had to develop a hydration plan as part of the protocols to return to play. Very simply, we're not going to put out the big jugs of water at practices and games anymore, where everybody's filling up their water bottles and things are getting passed around. We're asking all athletes to come prepared to practice with a minimum of 40 ounces of water, which is equivalent to 2 to 3 bottles of water. If they want to bring their own water jugs, it's fine. We're asking them to be labeled with their name on there. On events on the main field, if there's a game on the main field, we did purchase some water jugs that have touchless spouts that athletes can refill them during that time. So we were cognizant of that as well. Typically at 2:30 in the athletic office, our training room next to my office and Meg Greiner's office can be a popular area for kids that are getting treated, picking up first aid items, picking up ice for teams. We have to limit that as well. So we're putting some protocols in place for our athletic training guidelines. We temporarily have housed Meg down in the lower level of the high school. There's a hallway right off the main turf field that has a coach's room that we've created and put some tables in there where kids can enter one way and be outside and exit another way. And she's going to be taking basically appointments and do limited training inside there. So we put together protocols as well. We'll be sharing those as well. The coaches, we spoke to them as well about that. When day one comes on Tuesday, all of our teams are going to get some nice goodies. I purchased 1-gallon jugs of hand sanitizer for each team. Each of our teams will be getting a nice water spray bottle of all disinfectant to be provided for their teams. The coaches also, another slight recommendation, another small but actually important recommendation from the State Public High School Athletic Association is not to have the old-fashioned blow whistles. So we purchased the handheld button whistles that make the same similar noise. So they'll be given that. Coaches are going to be building in sanitizing breaks, disinfectant breaks, mask breaks for that matter, because kids will be getting used to playing with their masks on. So these are all part of the protocols that really had to change over time here. The guidelines that we utilize to develop our protocols for Hendrick Hudson, we utilize Department of Health, like it says, New York State Public High School Athletic Association, NFHS, and Section 1 Athletics. I have been part of the Section 1 Athletics Task Force for COVID-19. So I was lucky enough to get different voices throughout the summer here on different types of best practices that people were utilizing prior to implementing them. The fall season and I probably could have talked about this earlier with the calendar, we're looking at about 8 weeks. If we're at September 9th, I told the coaches today to kind of use like Thanksgiving weekend as the barometer where potentially there could be a sectional championship, and maybe it'll be the weekend before, the weekend after. We're still sorting out some of the details with that. It's very nice now that Hendrick Hudson can say in November, we have this beautiful turf that can be used for an all-weather area. We have our lights. So many districts are battling that when November 2nd comes around and it's daylight savings time, they won't be able to host certain games. So I'm working with my peers now, adjusting schedules where I might host teams later in the season that don't have lights, and I'll go to them earlier in the season when it's pre-daylight savings time. So that's just part of the scheduling. The schedules are up on BOCES, but I've been telling coaches and telling the kids, don't necessarily go by them yet. There's so many changes and so many moving parts with various facilities that we still have a lot of details to work out. There's still some things on the agenda from the Section 1 standpoint that are very important, I think, to our community. And I wanted to make sure I touch base today, and that's the spectators at the events. The Department of Health guidelines stated that there are 2 spectators per participant. However, when in my meetings the last few weeks in Section 1, like I said, with athletic directors and superintendents, we started to speak about that potentially only hosting events that allowed home spectators, 2 spectators per home team. It's now escalated to the point where we may be at a position in our section where we phase in, where we have no spectators for a period of time, phase into just the home to potentially, and I say potentially phase into just the home, or potentially home and away, and then potentially home and away. It's still up in the air. I sit on the Section 1 Athletic Council. I know it's going to be on our agenda next week. September 29th is the first day for practices. No games or scrimmages can start until Saturday, October 10th. So there's some time there and still working them out. I think there's a lot of uneasiness with districts in opening schools. And then on top of that, potentially having spectators from all different communities coming. So we're just trying to strategize on what we can do to hopefully make this last for our kids. And as I said earlier, to give them the one shot that we hopefully have here. And whether you're not aware or not aware, we did enter into an agreement this past summer with Local Live. When I knew this potentially could be a problem with spectators, the district was really supportive about entering Local Live. And Local Live is an organization that's out there that many districts in our area have that streamlines, live streams our events. Some of them have multiple cameras. We hopefully will have installed fairly soon, and I'm working with Ms. Nair and trying to get the technology piece and get so it's prepared so that they can come do the install. So we don't necessarily have a calendar yet for that, but we will have the capabilities to live stream events on the main field and also in the main gymnasium. So I'd like to say it'll be here by October 10th, but I can't, and I think that's probably being a little overly optimistic, but I can say that it'll be here this year. So I think that'll be a nice item, not only for the families that potentially may not be able to be at an event, but even for distant families around the country for that matter, that can always pop in and watch a Hendrick Hudson event. So we are prepared for Tuesday. I think our kids are overly eager to just get back out there on Tuesday. And I'm confident that the protocols that we have in place put us in the best position to be ready for Tuesday as well.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to see the kids out practicing again. Probably won't be seeing much of them since I won't be allowed on campus, but it'll be good to know that they're there.
But maybe live stream.
Maybe live stream, yes. Dropping my daughter off and picking her up, those kinds of things. But thank you very much. It sounds like there's a lot of thought that's been put into this, and I truly hope that it works out and we're able to maintain sports through the year. Does anybody have any questions? Again, an excellent presentation. All the questions have been answered already. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Tom. Thank you.
All right, next up are policy readings. The policy committee has not met in a while, but when we last met, we were ready to present these policies, and then they got derailed by all of our COVID stuff. So who wants to start off reading our first policy, which is going to be student records? Lisa, thanks.
Yeah, I can start reading it if you want me to. So this is policy 5500, student records. The Board of Education recognizes its legal
Move to
responsibility.
waive the reading.
Okay,
Anyone second?
We don't need to second a waive.
Okay.
No, okay.
So this is the portion where you get to ask questions and make comments about the policy and whether there's anything that you would like to see changed.
Yeah. So as Carol mentioned, this was a lot of work of the policy committee led by Laura last spring. These are mandated changes to our existing policies to comply with Ed Law 2D. You may remember a number of years ago, there were many security issues with New York State testing companies taking and selling student data for marketing purposes, and student information was being shared. It was a really big deal. It was probably around 2014-15, that area. So many new rules and regulations from the state education department were made, and schools need to amend their policies to comply. So I'll let Laura talk a little bit more about this one because she's been leading the charge on this.
Sure. So as Joe said, there's two policies. They both fall under the changes in part, I remember 121 in Ed Law 2D. And again, it's really in the effort to protect student personal identifiable information, which we call PII. And in that vein, we've created a new policy, and then we had to revise the 5500 to reflect some of the changes in the new policy. And with that, we've really been putting a lot of these practices already in play. So knowing that this was coming out last spring, we already began before COVID collecting from all of our staff, just identifying every single software, vendor, app, anything that they use. We provide a lot of purchase software, but teachers also are very, creative, and they find things that work for them and work for their students. And it's actually a wonderful aspect of teaching. And but we needed to make sure that if they were using it, and if it was using a student's PII, that it was vetted. And so in that process, we have been spending the summer, and I mentioned this at the last board meeting, that I have 3 tech coaches who have been assisting in this process and ensuring that we have a contract signed with every vendor, and that they also sign our parent bill of rights. And this basically indicates to make sure that they're following all of the standards outlined by the law to make sure that they are protecting our students' data. The parent bill of rights for all the vendors we use, whether paid or free, if they use PII, will be put on the website because that is public information. So we use Education Framework as our tool to gather and communicate with vendors, because it's hundreds of vendors. And so in the next coming weeks, you'll be seeing another link on the website under privacy, which will list all of those. But that's basically the work. And also training and making sure that our staff are aware, reminding them of smart practices online. A lot of this year will be focused on, continuing of revising and tweaking our cybersecurity practices. So right now we're in the process of preparing and planning more training for staff in October, which is the last thing they want to do. But we had some training rolled out before the school year started, but we really want to make sure that this training hits home and they truly understand the importance of it. And we're not just checking a box to say we did the training, but that they truly understand, that they are the gatekeepers of student information and what they use with the students, and, their rights and responsibilities. So we're working with Lyric on some of these tools and resources. And then again, the tech coaches, we're planning out some trainings in October for staff. Some of it will be pre-recorded. We're trying to not take too much of their time, because I know teachers right now are really trying to focus on really enhancing their curriculum and collaborating with each other. but we will be having to take some time for that training. So it's part of this process. And the staff have a list right now of all of the apps that have been approved, so they know going into the school year what they can and cannot use. And they've been really good. If they know they want to try something or try a new website or try a new tool, they know to reach out to myself and my team to first ask for permission for that. And then we go through that vetting process. So that's pretty much the gist of it.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Does anybody have any questions? So this is a revision, so I don't think we need to have a second reading on this. We can just approve it tonight if everybody is okay with this policy. So if everybody is okay with the policy, can I get a motion to approve the revision of policy 5500 student records?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you very much. Our next policy is policy number 8635, which is information and data privacy, security, breach, and notification. Corey, you want to start reading this one?
Sure. Policy
Thank you.
8635, Information and Data Privacy Security, Breach, and Notification. Board of Education acknowledges the heightened concern regarding the rise in identity theft and the need for secure networks and prompt notification when security breaches occur. The
Move
board
to waive
adopts
the reading of
Further
policy.
reading of policy 8635.
this is my favorite thing to do. Stop me. It's information security.
I figured you'd want to read the whole thing, Corey.
I
But
was just getting into the NIST standard. It was pretty cool.
All right, so let's talk about policy 8635 then. This is a first reading, so we'll have at least 2 readings of this policy before we can adopt it.
So in a similar vein, I'll let Laura take over, but this again is to comply with changing regulations from the State Education Department. Carol's correct. This is a brand new policy. These policies are sent to us either by various associations, directly by the state, by the School Boards Association, or in some cases written by our attorneys. So I'll let Laura weigh in on some of the particulars here.
So I kind of covered both of these when I just spoke before with Ed Law 2D. So this is the real true new policy regarding Ed Law 2D, which I just mentioned, and I was right, it was part 121. And we did, I did work closely with Keen and Bean on using, like Joe said, samples that were coming from NYSBA, and really creating it, making sure that it fit our needs. And again, so it's everything that I just said that we were doing, and hence why we needed to revise 5500. So this goes into all the student information, and everything I just explained that we've been doing and are working towards, it falls under this policy.
All right, so this one is pretty easy. Since it's a first reading, we don't need to approve it. We just need to kind of look at it. If there are any questions, we'll answer those questions tonight, and we will be bringing this policy back at a subsequent meeting, probably in 2 weeks, and that's when we would approve the policy. So if you have any comments or changes you think should be made, or any typos that you noticed, anything that you want changed on this policy, speak up.
I will add too that we did early in the policy, it shows that you need to appoint a data privacy officer. And so every district has had to do this. And you did appoint me as data privacy officer a few months back.
I caught something on the second page, the first full paragraph, the last sentence. It currently, I think it's missing a word. In that last sentence. It's the part that's talking about who need such access to fulfill their professional responsibilities or contractual obligations and destroy PII when it is no longer needed, its retention period has expired. It's between the needed and its. Again, this is the second page, the first full paragraph. And I think it either needs a semicolon or it needs an or. I'm not sure quite what's missing there, but I think there's a word missing right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty, we'll have a look at that. I see what you're saying. Lisa. Anybody else have anything? Lisa's an excellent editor, by the way. Okay, thank you very much. You'll have an opportunity to review this more at home. So if you have any comments or questions or anything else, please forward that along to someone on the policy committee. I realized while we were talking about these policies that we skipped our technology update during our superintendent's report. And I know several of us were anxious to have a technology update because all of us with children are hearing that there have been some glitches as we were expecting as we're starting the school year. So Laura, if you wouldn't mind giving us an update on what's been going on with the tech and changes and improvements we're making.
Sure. So yes, it is a challenging time in technology, and I could say this for all school districts. I was actually just earlier reading a thread with all of my colleagues who are just, everybody's in the same boat. They're trying to support families at home while Google and or Zoom is having a lot of issues and challenging. And our contractors, EduTech, actually released a statement today just verifying a lot of what we know is that, you know, a lot of these issues are happening during peak hours, especially when across the world, and people kind of laugh when I say it's a world issue, not just a regional, because everyone is using Google around the world. So they are kind of being tapped right now. And it's interesting because I think I felt like Google was just so robust and wouldn't have these issues, but they do, and they are addressing them. And every time there's an issue, they alert us, and then they alert us when it's been fixed. But it does result in right now, a lot of times Google Meets being dropped, which is very frustrating. And I just, our teachers are doing their best to try to connect with students right now. And I just empathize with them so much. And I'm trying to provide as many fixes and supports as we can within the limits that we do have. You know, they're running a class and the Google Meet might drop out and then they have to jump back in. So, you know, I'm keeping up with Google and seeing again what their updates are. They are rolling out, we will be rolling out Google Enterprise. I've talked about that. So we are part of Google Enterprise for Education. And with that will be a lot of enhancements in Google Meet. I signed us up for the beta program, the early access program for Google Enterprise, because I just didn't want us to have to wait any longer for certain features of Google Meet. But it is beta and they are looking for feedback. So our teachers know this, but this was the first week some of our teachers started using some of these features. So that might be, for example, a breakout room. So teachers can now, or anybody can do up to 100 breakout rooms. We don't need to do that in a classroom, but teachers can assign breakout rooms. So basically they can assign small groups, check in on kids as they're working collaboratively. I think this will be a really neat tool. Once our kids are in school and we're doing hybrid, you can connect the kids that are physically in the classroom and the kids that are home and assign them to small groups. We now have polling and Q&A in the Google Meet. We have Jamboard, which is a virtual whiteboard built into the Google Meet. There's a lot more controls now for the organizer, so the teacher. So just in the way that actually we're in a Zoom right now and Greg is controlling this meeting, he can mute me if he wanted to. With Google Meet, that's some of the new enhancements that are coming out. And then they will be rolling out more things like blurred backgrounds, virtual backgrounds, which Corey and I have right now in our Zoom. So the teachers are learning this, they're trying to figure it out. Last week we had half days and all of those afternoons were dedicated towards tech training. Our tech coaches, I say it every time, but they've been just phenomenal. So they've been running office hours every morning and afternoon where teachers can sign up in Google Calendar. They have appointment slots that they can sign up ahead of time to work one-on-one with a tech coach if they have a question about software, an app, you know, whatever it may be. The high school has definitely been focusing a lot on teaching Schoology and supporting the staff on that. But then again, last week, all the afternoon were all these tech sessions that the tech coaches ran. Our help desk, you know, it's interesting. It's always a busy time of the school year, but we normally service, you know, 250 something teachers. That our client base has grown exponentially. We have over 2,200 students. So our help desk is now open to students and families. So my team is running ragged, but they are doing the best they can to get to every student issue, every parent issue, as well as supporting the needs that normally happen in the opening of the school year in classrooms and with teachers. We're getting a lot of, frustrations about Google Meet. But besides that, just trying to work with people. We've still been handing out Chromebooks. Anybody who was unable to make any of those Chromebook pickups in August when we offer the large distribution dates, we're doing that. We also have the tech offices at Frank G. Lindsay. We've been making ourselves available Tuesday mornings and Thursday afternoons. So if a family has a Chromebook that the charger doesn't work or there's something wrong and they can't figure it out, they're able to come in there. We can assess it. We can swap out devices if needed. But we have about 300 help desk tickets a day. I looked it up before. Since the start of school year, we've had over 7,600 help desk tickets come in through the help desk. So it's a lot. And it's again, we're not the only ones, but we're used to just servicing the staff in the building. And then the students when they're in class with those teachers. But now we're trying to provide support to families at home on top of all the other teachers. So doing our best. We just try to make sure we respond as best as we can. But again, if people are experiencing Google Meet issues, we are aware of them, and we know what's going on, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we have updates. We've provided some resources and updates, and again, our technology website that's available for families has some links in there as well. And then we've been working. The teachers sort of play roles as well. They do tech support with kids and with parents, so they reach out to us for help, but then we give them some guidance, and then they communicate with the families. So I'm really excited to get kids back in school next week. All of our students that are coming back, because I think it'll help us alleviate a lot of issues, and we might be able to, help and fix some issues on site at that moment. But we hear the frustrations, and it is really a global issue that's happening right now with so many schools trying to utilize these tools. Zoom and Google Meet really were not created to be used as instructional tools. We've made them that way, but we could not afford, the tools that were made to work seamlessly to teach all day long. So that's why schools are using Google Meets or Zooms for this type of instruction. So I'm excited to see what happens next week. Middle school and high school, we have teachers getting ready to teach hybrid, have kids in class, have kids at home at the same time. And so, I think the teachers are anxious, and but I think once they get in there and they get started, I think they're going to do a phenomenal job. And we're going to continue to provide supports to teachers as we move along. And I think I've said it earlier, once we get our teachers sort of settled, we'll try to find more time to create some parent support as well.
Do you find our equipment's been adequate? I know you upgraded our Wi-Fi or our bandwidth, I should say, and our Chromebooks working out okay?
Yeah, so we increased our bandwidth to 2 gigs. We had originally increased it to 1, and then we realized that better safe than sorry. We've increased it to 2. So we've been working closely with Best Web, which is our internet provider. We've given out basically every Chromebook we have. And we have an order of Chromebooks like every other district that is just back ordered, and we're waiting. Some of the Chromebooks that people have might be a little bit older than some of the newer ones. And as soon as our Chromebooks come in, and we're being promised, and hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll be able to notify those families and do some swaps so they have some better equipment. All of the schools have styluses to hand out to their students and to the teachers, because the goal of all this is everybody would have a school provided device that's a touchscreen. We've been working with also just identifying, even with staff that are moving classrooms, maybe the music teachers, we're assigning them their own keyboards and their own mice to travel with them, moving around, and also utilizing iPads where necessary as well.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Laura? I thought you were about to raise your hand, Corey, and then you faked me out.
And there's so many variables in having a good online experience that, it's really hard to manage something like that. So I give you a lot of credit for dealing with all those issues, because it's so hard to pinpoint where you have a problem. It could be the computer, it could be the student's ISP, it could be that they have a bad router, it could be that there's some other connection down the line that you have absolutely no control over. So, I think parents and students, are going to do the best they can, and I know you are too. So, we all appreciate everything you're doing on that. Thank you, Corey.
And I do want to also just remind the public that if language is a barrier, our current help desk is English speaking, but EduTech is offering multiple languages of support. So if someone does put a help desk ticket in themselves or on behalf of someone who might be having a language barrier preventing them from getting the proper help they need, we can put them in touch with an EduTech support technician that speaks that language. So I think that's really important. And sometimes I think that gets lost, and some community and family members are afraid to reach out. We want them to reach out if there's any trouble. And a lot of our teachers are doing that on families' behalf as our guidance counselors and principals and any other support staff. But that is a tool that we have available to us.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything before we move along? Okay. Our next section is audience comments. And just to remind our audience, it is an audience comments section. This is not a question and answer section. I am going to read our usual statement, which obviously is modified during time of COVID. So to maintain an orderly meeting, the board has established the following guidelines for those wishing to address the board. Each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to commenting. At this point, you have to email your comments into Carmen ahead of time. When called, each speaker should step up to the podium, state their name and affiliation if applicable prior to starting their comment. Letters, petitions, or other written material should be handed to the district clerk. Carmen will be reading the comments this evening. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by me, the board president at the moment. All comments must be directed to the board. The board will listen to comments, but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Operational matters will be directed to school administrators for handling. The board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner. Then with that, Carmen, do we have any comments this evening?
Yes, hi, everyone. We have 3 comments this evening that we would like to put into the record. The first one that came in before 12 noon today. The first one came from Rose Howard. His comment is, since you are all on Zoom, why can't you make this meeting so that we can actually participate on Zoom? It is getting old that you just do speeches. Open it up to the community. All the schools and PTAs have proven this to be a success. What is holding you up?
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. This is a comment section. The question and answer sessions that we have set up at the schools are indeed the question and answer sessions. So I'm glad that you're finding those useful. And we are, as you may have heard earlier, hoping to continue those going forward.
The next comment statement is from Leslie Hunt. Dear members of the Hen Hut Board of Education, I'm writing to ask for your ongoing attention regarding issues of equity with students in remote instruction. In particular, elementary students in remote instruction should receive equitable instruction and experiences in their class specials. Yesterday, we were told that the only instruction these students would receive would be in the form of pre-recorded videos. When asked if pre-recorded instruction was considered equitable instruction, Superintendent Hochreiter said that pre-recorded instruction should be a part of a model that would include live instruction. In that way, will the district ensure that remote students receive equitable instruction in art, music, etc.? Thank you in advance for your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Leslie. I think we addressed that in the superintendent's update. And since this is a question that comes up repeatedly, perhaps we can add that to the FAQ if we haven't already.
The next question came in from Laura Wentz. I have one question that I would like to have asked at tonight's Board of Education meeting. When will the COVID-19 screening app be available to download?
Thank you, Laura. That was a very timely question, and I am sure you already saw our demonstration of the app, and hopefully you received your email earlier today.
Those are the three questions that came in. They will be put into the minutes and noted.
All right, thank you. So we are next up to board comments and new business. And in our never-ending discussion on how to run our meetings, I'd like to talk about how to run our meetings. I think Joe has done some research into where we might be able to have an in-person meeting, how much extra this may cost us, and I'd like to kind of discuss whether we want to try to have our next meeting in person or the meeting after that. Lisa gave us some feedback from some of the other districts about how they've been experiencing quite a few difficulties, but it may be worth giving it a try just so we give it a try.
Yeah, the feedback, and I'll just echo what Lisa has reported. The feedback has been that districts have been trying to go back to an in-person model. There are various models. One would be an in-person model with limited audience physically present based on social distancing and based on other capacity guidelines set forward by the state. Another model would be the board meets in public, but does not allow visitors to enter the facility. In that case, the board meeting would still need to be live streamed. So while the board is together as a body, or there could be the scenario where a number of board members are together and a number of board members are virtual in the same room. Regardless, if there isn't public present, which is a decision the board could make, that meeting will need to continue to be live streamed. We could also continue in our current format. Districts who have gone to a live meeting have reported all sorts of experiences, as Lisa shared. They're 6 feet apart. They're wearing a mask. There's mics. That becomes audio and visual complications. Basically, the quality of the production of the live meeting is really diminished because in order to capture half a dozen or more people, board members, and myself, 6 feet apart, you really have to have a wide camera angle. You got to be pretty far away from everybody, and your audio would then would go from a mic to a speaker to the camera and then broadcast. So some districts have given it the old college try and then said, "Oh, that wasn't all that exciting." In terms of space, so that's a model. Those are different models. In terms of space, we might be limited. We had thought about identifying one of our elementary cafeterias. The good news is our cafeterias are being used after school by Mother Connection for daycare. They're used until as late as 6 o'clock, and we do not believe that we don't believe that would give adequate time for that space to be flipped in terms of being sanitized from the children who are there, and then for the board to arrive in a clean and healthy spot. We're investigating whether or not we could use gymnasiums. For example, the gymnasium in the middle school or the high school, we would need to set up and tear down. So there would be some cost to that in terms of custodial or maintenance overtime and time on task. In the cafeterias, for example, the cafeteria at Blue Mountain Middle School, has desks throughout, and they're socially distanced. They're already 6 feet apart. We certainly could go into that kind of area. The only caveat would be, again, we're going to incur some costs for that facility or any facility to be cleaned again. So all of our schools are going to be cleaned at the end of the day. Any new body that comes in, we all would need to go through the screener, which makes sense. But also that facility or that area would need to be cleaned again. I did some measurements downstairs in our boardroom. In our boardroom, we could fit 8 or 9 individuals in a socially distanced way. We would be in a very large rectangle that would encompass the entire boardroom downstairs. We would not have room for any visitors. We would have to test what the video quality would be because the camera would literally be set up at one end of the room, and it would shoot the whole long, narrow rectangle to capture everyone who would be there at least 6 feet apart. Now, what some districts have done is they've only required the superintendent and school board members that feel comfortable returning to be live, and that other staff, the board clerk and other administrators who routinely participate in meetings, that they would dial in remotely. We also know that in some districts, while boards have been attempting or have been coming back to live meetings, that not all board members feel comfortable. So if you were watching a school board meeting, you may have four board members live, and you may have 3 who are dialing remotely, whether on Zoom or Google Meets, and they're up on a screen and they have dialogue together. The issue is that entire operation needs to be videotaped and captured as we do, but also needs to be live streamed. And that's where districts are reporting some audio and visual hiccups. In terms of cost, any model that we use, with the exception of district office, would incur some overtime costs. That would be 2 individuals for setup and tear down and cleaning. Our estimated cost would be around $700 for that per meeting. And if we were to allow the public to attend meetings, we would need to have at least 2 staff members present, which also would incur around $700 of overtime. Those 2 staff members would have 2 functions. One would be to admit the public before they come into the building and administer the health COVID screening. And another individual would need to be physically in the meeting location to enforce mask wearing and enforce social distancing. So we have some options. We also have the experience of other districts. There are some in our BOCES who have heard the call, to go back to live meetings, and they did their level best to put together a really good production and to offer at least some seats for the public. And they reported that none of the public came because it's actually easier to participate in a board meeting virtually than to hop in the car, leave the house, and go through the process of going into a school in our current state. But there are some options. We can continue to research location. But earlier this week, as I said, we pulled out the tape measure and did some measurements around the district office that, from a operations standpoint, might be the easiest, but we would need to test the quality of the production because, again, you all have been in that room. Maybe Alex hasn't, but it is a long and narrow room, and that would be the only way we would be able to fit. So again, Greg and I can test some of the video, but perhaps because it's in a more enclosed and not so cavernous location, we wouldn't have the audio issues that we would anticipate if we were in a gymnasium or a cafeteria or somewhere else.
Right. Does anybody have any comments about meetings? All right, who wants to have in-person meetings? Someone has to make some comments about this.
I'm still in favor of in-person meetings. I do think it would help our communications and our working relationships. I wonder if we could investigate the new live streaming that we're using for the gymnasium, whether that might be like the for the athletics that's being installed. I don't know if that's even an option, because then we could use the bleachers and spread out on the gym floor, and that sounds like that camera system might be installed in October. I don't know if that's an option.
Yeah, the camera systems for those athletic events are fixed. They're usually up in the corner in the rafters to capture the entire, in this case, the gymnasium floor, or to capture the entire field. So there isn't really a visual quality or a lot of production value in that.
Okay,
because
I'm just brainstorming.
Yeah. The idea is to have a fixed camera angle and sort of have it be low maintenance in terms of we have an animal in terms of hands-on working a camera, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the out of
That's
the
I'm
box
still looking
thinking.
forward to. Yeah, but I was still going on record that I think we should at least try taking what's worked, like Lisa's learned, what we've heard from other districts, and try it and see. We don't know until we try it. So I would like to see us move forward, or moving towards that at least.
I agree with you, Alex. I think we should try an in-person meeting. I think if we, take precautions and, I think there's a lot to be said for getting everybody in one room and actually having a conversation rather than, just, raising hands and, this sort of, every, headshots or not, as the case may be. And if we can do this in a classroom with, a teacher and 12 kids, they should be able to pull together we should be able to fit, 12 people in a classroom area, again, socially distanced and stream that the same way the teachers do in the classrooms.
I'm gonna chime in here. I think as we talk about giving in-person a chance, I don't think we've actually given online a chance yet, because we're not using Zoom or Google Meet to its fullest capabilities. We haven't allowed audiences to come in directly to the Zoom, to comment to a moderator and provide comments that way, which would be much more effective. I think if we can get that done first, and that doesn't work, then I think we can try moving to live. But I got to tell you, why do we need to do that? And I'm someone who is incredibly objective on this, because the risk to me and my family is extremely minimized, right? So I am not concerned about me. I am concerned about the students. I am concerned about spending money on something that is not necessary when we could do this just as easily and save money for the public. And we're putting the kids at risk, and we're putting anybody who attends in person at risk. Why would we do that when we can get all the same functionality from these online meetings? And to be quite honest, I think the audio is better, the video is better, the sharing is better. We just haven't used the capabilities of these online meetings the way we should be at this point.
Certainly seem to have a lot more participation in our online meetings than we ever have in our in-person meetings. From the public, that is, not from us. We're participating the same. All right. Anybody else want to make comments? Bill?
Yeah, I'm almost to the point where I think our Zoom board meetings are going to become, they may have already, but if we continue to add the options, as Corey was stating, so the public can make their public comments, I think at that point, the Zoom meetings are much more productive for the community and us than in-person meetings. With that said, if we do eventually go back, when we eventually go back to in-person, if we do, because keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of new norms with technologies adopted in the future, as opposed to going back to just the way we used to do it just because. And I understand there's state rules that would have to change to allow that, but that may be part of the changes. But if and when we do go into person, Mary Pat brought up an interesting comment, Joe, about a classroom. Do we have any classrooms that are like double, triple rooms that could be used for that purpose?
I'd have to check room utilization. I think the issue is in this heightened era, whether or not we would feel comfortable going into a space, and maybe that's what Corey was talking about, going into a space that's routinely used by kids. And that, that may change, that may change people's comfort level. I was asked to identify and ballpark what out-of-pocket costs would be, because any space we use, I guess regardless of student utilization, will need to be sanitized before we come in and will need to be sanitized after we leave for the next group of kids. So that's where some of those costs are coming from. We incurred costs when we met in the high school library. Many of you, if we had a late executive session or when the meeting ended, the crew came in and, did breakdown and then had to set up the library. And depending on how long our meeting went, oftentimes those gentlemen were on overtime. So I could look at room utilization. We may have some rooms that are empty and vacant, but we may need to bring the furniture back in, because in the case of the middle school and the high school, a lot of desks and tables have been set up in large spaces for cafeteria or other functions.
I almost see once, if we're allowed to, and it's the direction we go into back to live meetings, that we're almost going to all have some kind of laptop in front of us and be broadcasting the way we are right now via Zoom, because the community is going to say, we like that better and you need to continue it. So I don't know what I don't know that there's a large value to having us in person, which we're potentially exposing, the kids and other parents and teachers unnecessarily, and ourselves in this, bringing more people together. But I think it's coming to a point where the Zoom is a more effective meeting place for this type of meeting.
Just one other comment. I wanted to acknowledge Corey's point about, I totally get what you're saying, Corey, that maybe there's places we can go with this platform. Let's definitely try to explore that. But then I guess we also have to ask ourselves, is it a financially sound decision? If we're looking at $700 to $1,400 a meeting, is that the best way to use resources? So I've got more to think about, sorry. I'll get back to you all.
Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. I mean, that's why we wanted those figures, right? To find out how expensive it would be to run the meetings if we were going to do in person. If we were going to do district office in person, that's the least expensive way to do it. And if we wanted to do something relatively soon, like the next meeting in a couple of weeks or the meeting after that, I think we would probably have to be zeroing in on looking at using the district office and maybe not having the public at those meetings. I just wanted to clarify something. If we have the public allowed into the meetings, then we don't live stream anymore. Is that correct?
I kind of misspoke. If we have a cap on the number of community members that we allow in, we still need to live stream because it's not accessible for everybody.
Okay, because I've been very happy with the amount of attendance that we've been getting with the live stream and with the Zoom meetings. It's been really nice to see more community members kind of tuning in and seeing what we're doing on a live basis rather than waiting for the video to come out, and which might be several days or a week later, depending. So anyway, I kind of want to get a straw poll of how people are feeling about whether they want to try to do a meeting maybe in the boardroom in person, either next meeting or the meeting after. Mary Pat, I think you're a yes. So I'll start with you.
I think it's worth trying. I think it sends the right message of leadership and community. I mean, we're asking everybody else to come back. So I think for us to sit here, I mean, we're talking one extra cleaning. They're cleaning before anyway. So I really don't think that the I don't think it's as expensive or as problematic as it seems to be, being argued right now. But I do
Okay.
think it matters, and I think it would help for us to be in like public.
Okay, Bill?
I think at this point, with limited space to have the distancing and not being able to have the public, if we go to the district office, we wouldn't have the public there anyway. I would say we should stay Zoom.
Alex? Oh, wait, I'll come back to you. You said you needed to think more. Lisa?
I don't know. It's hard for me too, because I've had that experience of listening to other districts who were actually told by their community, hey, go back to Zoom because we can't hear any of you. And it's really, stinky quality, and we preferred the Zoom option. I do see the value in meeting in person, and being together, but at the same point, if we can't be heard and we have, I would like to see the full capabilities of Zoom being looked at a little bit more. I wouldn't be completely opposed to meeting in person either, though, especially if it was like at the district office, just to try it out and see what we can do. So I guess I'm kind of a maybe, or I could go
You're
either
on the
way.
fence still.
I'm on the fence still, yes.
Corey?
So two points I'd like to make. So if we're asking to have this meeting in person, the annual cost would be $39,000 a year based on the numbers we just talked about conservatively, right? 26 meetings, $1,400, $1,500 a meeting. It's about $39,000. If someone could check my math. So that's one issue. Is it really worth it for that kind of cost, given all the financial issues that we have? The second thing is we keep talking about, well, we're asking everybody else to come back. We should come back. We're giving people the option to come back. There are a number of students that have opted to stay at home. There are students that have opted to come into the school. And why should this be any different if that is the case? People should have the option as to whether they're in person or not. I feel very uncomfortable forcing all the other board members to go and have an in-person meeting when maybe they don't feel safe by doing that. And then it also affects the students and the staff. We're requiring the staff to come in and put themselves at risk. And I think that we have to be very conscious of other people that might be affected by this when we could be much more effective in these online meetings. If people use the video, if we use the full extent of the Zoom capabilities, I think that we'd have a very different experience for the public on the whole. And I think it would be much better than an in-person meeting where you won't be able to hear everybody or see anybody.
Alex, we're back around to you.
I think I would like to see our meeting in 2 weeks, maybe taking to heart some of these suggestions or ideas that Corey has. I don't know what they are specifically because I'm not a tech person. But if we can explore that for our meeting in 2 weeks, and in that time, if Joe can do some sound checks, video, so we could actually, you can come back and say yep, this would definitely not work. This is still a possibility. That maybe we can have a different, better informed decision after those two data points.
So we'll have some mannequins sitting in the district office and mic set up.
I'll come in. I'll wear a mask.
I'm just obviously trying to be funny. Maybe that's not so funny at this hour. I would be fine with coming into the district office and trying an in-person meeting. I have my doubts about how well that's going to work, as you might know from prior comments at prior meetings. So I'm not sure we have consensus on this. And certainly if we can find a way to have the public comments read by the person who is making them, because that's really the only section of the meeting where the public participates, right, is the public comment section. I don't know exactly how that would work. You'd have to have people, I guess, sign in ahead of time by noon that they were going to make a comment and then be called in order, and we would have to give them passwords or something like that. I'm sure that I know there's a way to do that. Bill?
Again, I had mentioned, maybe it was an exec, I think, that I've listened to some town board meetings recently, and they allow for the community to ask questions and comments on the fly. Basically, there's an option within Zoom. You say you raise your hand, and then Greg, as the moderator, would be allowed. Somehow he lets that one person in to the meeting to speak. And the town did this very effectively. You don't see
Right,
the
but
other.
the board meetings aren't question and answer sessions, so we don't really need people to be speaking on the fly, right?
No, but what I'm saying is they don't need to sign up by noon. During the public comment section, they could listen to our board meeting. Then during the public comment section, they could raise their hand. You recognize, Greg tells you who's there. You recognize them. He lets them speak. And then we continue with our meeting on the fly during those two public comment sections.
Ah, got it. Okay.
And it was very controlled. You don't see who the other participants are. And it seems like most people just participated with voice, but there was a capability for them to use video also, should they decide to. So it gave a very nice feeling of audience comment section compared to reading an email. So the town has been doing it. So if we need to ask how it's done, Town of Cortland's doing it already.
Right. So I think we have two issues. It's participation in the meeting during the public comment section, and then it's also the optics of I have to be in the school, so you guys should be doing your meetings in person, which are two different subjects, right? We certainly could be more useful with our Zoom usage, but the question is whether it's important to our community for us to be meeting in person as a group. That was the end of that sentence. So if anybody wants to jump in. All right, so I got a lot of maybes and wishy-washies about should we have an in-person meeting.
How about if we follow what Alex was suggesting and we try to take advantage of the full capabilities of Zoom for our next meeting. And during that 2 weeks, we also explore, what it would look like inside the district office to have a meeting in there, what the optics would be of that particular room. And then we can come back with some other options to better inform our decision-making after that.
Bill?
If we want to go in this direction, why don't we just do a hybrid model, have it set up in the board meeting, make sure we know who's going to attend and not attend ahead of time. And basically everybody's going to attend, who's in the board meeting is still going to participate via a Zoom program. So it's still a Zoom meeting, but we can have our some of our board members together, and the ones who would rather stay home, they can stay home. And it's going to have this same feeling to the community that they can see everybody. I think the community is going to ask us to all be on a similar Zoom type situation when we do come all back together, because
That's geography, Bill.
It's what?
It's geography where we are. It's the same thing. If we're not together, it defeats, and the idea is to get us together in a room so that we could communicate better. That's geography, whether somebody happens to be in the school or in their own home. It's geography. That doesn't accomplish the issue with working together or the optics.
Well,
having us just doing the hybrid as you speak.
The optics is more of seems to be a secondary issue because it's a practical issue. Which is better? Forget optics. Which works better? And
correct. Working together in a room together is much more effective, I think, than having 7 people or 12 people or 15, depending on who's on this call, and just doing it that way.
I don't know that I would agree with that. I mean, I think we were a little awkward when we started these meetings, the first few. but they've gotten much better now that we're utilizing the Zoom better, and they could get even better when we could get the audience comments section in here. So I think we're actually more effective in the Zoom than we are. So just to do it for optics when it's not as effective to the community or to the board, I don't know that it makes sense either. You know, in general, it doesn't make sense.
I actually find it a lot easier to hear everybody in this format than I ever did in a board room, because people would be way down the other end of the table.
There's also so much less side conversation. Like, people are focused on what is being talked about and giving a person the opportunity to speak without all the side conversation. I think that this is a much more focused meeting. I mean, to me, I feel more productive in these meetings. When I can see everybody, it's great because you can see them. You can see whether they're paying attention to you. You can see whether they have body language that might be an issue. That's why the video is absolutely so important for us to connect. And for those who might not be taking advantage of the video, you know, it is a different experience. So I think it's important that we keep in mind that this is a new way of working, that our students are all doing this now. So I would take the same argument. If we're asking our students to be online and take their classes online, why can't the board be doing the same thing? We just need to be doing it much more effectively.
All right, so for the next meeting, let's continue doing our Zoom meeting. Let's see if we can get it set up that our audience comments can be actual live audience comments. We'll continue investigating having board meetings in the board room downstairs at the district office. As far as the audio goes and where we might be able to put the camera and whether that's even going to be feasible. And that'll be that for next meeting. How's that sound? Okay, I'm getting nods and thumbs up. Excellent. All right. Any other board comments or new business?
"37 people still on. Just went down to 36.
Wow. That one person realized we're just about wrapping up.
Yep.
Checking my list. I think that everything I had wanted to talk about this evening was covered. Anybody else have anything before we ask to close the meeting? All right. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
We will see you at our next board meeting.